Hello everyone! Today we're going to be making a Chrome extension for converting your page from dark mode to light mode and from light mode to dark mode. So let me just show you a little sneak peek of what we're going to be creating today. So if I go into YouTube and this is the extension, it's going to be a pop-up and it is going to look like this. We're going to create the pop-up and make it look like this. And we have this little button down here. When you click on it, it is going to turn your page into dark mode, and when you click on it again, it's going to go back to normal mode. And the next thing I want to show is that it's not just limited to YouTube, so you can look for anything, such as if I wanted to look for puppies, and then if I wanted to turn on my dark mode, the page is going to go into dark mode. And finally, one last thing I want to say is that it's not just limited to turning normal pages into dark mode. If your page is already in dark mode, if you turn it on, it's going to go into light mode. So let me just get in here and demonstrate. So if I change my page to dark mode and then turn on my extension, the page is going to go into light mode like so. So let me turn it back off. And so if this sounds like something you're interested in making, stay tuned in because we're going to be jumping into the code right now. Okay, so now we can start coding this. And so to get started, what I'm going to do is basically drag this down here and into Visual Studio Code, and then that will just open up the project for us. And I'm just gonna open this up fully like so. There we go. Now what we need to do is basically the first step to create any Chrome extension is to create a manifest.json file. So what the manifest.json file does is it basically sends information to Chrome about your extension. So the information could be something like the name of the extension, the description, or like basic information about it, like the version, and you can also give the permissions that your extension needs and the scripts that you're going to be linking it to and that kind of information. So first, let's create that manifest.json file, manifest.json, and it's going to be in the form of JSON, so it's going to be like this, and then name, and we want to set the name to invert.io. And the next thing we want to do is, actually I don't want that in capital. All right, next thing we want to do is set the description. It's nice to have the description to be something short and nice. So like, let's just say something like go from dark mode to light mode and vice versa. I think that's spelled with an S, so I'm just gonna change it. Okay, cool. No, that looks weird. Okay, maybe it's alright. Anyways, it's just spelling. The next thing we need is to set the version to this. So I'm just sticking to this convention, but you don't necessarily have to. You can go with various kinds of conventions for the version. The next thing we need to do is set the manifest version to 2. So the reason the manifest version has to be 2 is because it's the most supported version from Chrome. So it's also the most stable and most recent version, so we set it to 2 until some new stable version comes out. So there we go. So that's the manifest version. So the next thing we need to do is set the background. So what the background does is, in here we define the things that should be running in the background. So first we need some scripts running in the background. So in here, let me say popup.js. So for this particular project, it's really simple and we only need one script. But if you did have many scripts, this is where it would go. So it's in an array because you can attach multiple scripts in here basically. So like I could have a comma in here and I could say, I don't know, script to .js. But here we only need one, so let's just stick to this. So the next thing we need is to set persistent to true. This ensures that it's always persistently running in the background. So the next thing we need to do is basically set the browser action. So browser action. So it's basically, browser action is basically the action that your browser does when the way the browser basically responds when you click on the extension. So here we want to say the default. Okay, everything has to go in quotes in here because it's JSON. And default title, and we can just set it to invert.io again, And the next thing we want to do is, so since we're creating a little pop-up like I just showed, we need to set the default pop-up, and we need to give it the page it has to read, the HTML page from which it has to read the content of the pop-up. So we're just going to call it popup.html. So that's the browser action. And finally, what we need to do is set the permissions. So permissions is basically the things that your browser has access to. Permissions is an array, unlike everything else in here, which is an object. So permissions, so our particular extension is going to need access to all these HTTPS pages. And so we're gonna have to type this. And the next thing we need to do is get access to the HTTP pages. And the final thing we need access to is the tabs, which basically will tell us which tab is currently open so that we know which page to apply the dark mode styles on. So that's basically all we need for the manifest.json file. If there's anything missing, we can come back to it and make changes. One extra tip that I would mention in here is that all of these are like case sensitive. So if this was in capital, if your default was like D capital or like the whole thing capital, it usually doesn't work. So make sure you have everything correct, and persistent should be spelled with the T. And there we go. That's all we need to do for the manifest.json file. And next we'll be creating the popup.html file. So let's create the popup.html and the popup.js file. So popup.html and popup.js. So inside the popup.html, if we press exclamation and tab, Visual Studio Code basically generates this boilerplate code for you, and then we can type in hello world inside the body. And what this should do is basically create the pop-up that we were looking for, since we mentioned that the default pop-up is popup.html. So let's go in here to Chrome. So it says Chrome, so you need to go to Chrome / extensions. And this is the old version of the pop-up that I made of the dark mode extension. So here what we need to do is turn on developer mode, and that will show you this tab, and then click on load unpacked. And now what you need to do is basically navigate to where your project is inside your computer. And for me, it's here, and I'm just gonna select that. And there we go. It says errors, great. Browser action. Do I have some, oh, I spelled browser wrong. That's great. I mean, not great, but like, okay. Browser. All right, this should have fixed it. Let's clear all, go back, reload, and there we go, no errors. If I click on, let me just pin up invert.io, and then if I click on this, hello world, there we go, the pop-up works. So now what we need to do is, we don't want to just see hello world, we want to see the actual code working for the pop-up. So this is what it should look like. So I have it open in Figma, so let me just open it, and I can make it like this, and I can get this smaller, and I think that's good enough. Okay, so let's go to the popup.html, and first we need to get the h1 tag for the heading, and we want to give a span yellow because half the text is in yellow, and well, I spelled yellow wrong. And then the next thing we need to do is set span to blue for the blue part of it. So in here we're gonna have invert, and here we're gonna have .io. And then we can have like a p tag, and inside the p tag we can have all of this text. Let me copy that, and we can put that in here. And finally what we need is to create the button. So this will be the button will be purely made using CSS and JavaScript. So let me just type up button, and what we need is to create a .row for, no, type that wrong, .row, and set it to on, and then just get that down here and type off in here. Okay, so I'll just open it up in live server so that we know what it looks like, because we don't want to open it up every single time. So there we go. Let me just close these two. Okay, so it looks like this, and it looks a bit plain, so let's just style it up a bit more. So let's add the style tag in here. And first what we want to do is to import the Google fonts. So let me get in here, and so this looks pretty nice. So let's just get this font, so regular, and then let's go into I'm looking for the pairings. So pairings, okay, down here, and let's get open sans because it always looks nice. So let me get that, and let's copy the code from here, and if we just paste it down here, we'll be able to access the Google Fonts. So let me go to the H1 and use this. Let me just copy that, and this would give it that font family that we're looking for. Next thing we want to do is go to type in yellow and get this yellow color from here, and color, and set the color to this. And then the next thing we want to do is blue and get the color to this. So color and this, and that's basically all we need to do with the H1 tag. Next, what we want to do is give the P tag as well as the button the font family that we're looking for. So it is open sans, and let me copy that, and maybe font size 1.25 rem. All right, let's see what that looks like. That looks like this. It's a bit big, but like, okay, let me just make it 1.15. I guess that's okay. The next thing we want to do is actually make the button look like the button. So like button, and get back in here and give it this background color. So let me copy that, and background color, and let's give it the right background color. And next we want to set the position to relative so we can position the circle on top absolutely and like mess around with it. Next thing we want to do is set the display to flex because we want the content in here to be in one line, and flex direction and set that to row, and then align items center, and we want to justify content space between. Space between, they're not evenly thing yet. All right, between. And okay, and the width is 2 off, so let's just say something like height, set the height to 2 rem, and then say width of like maybe 4 rem, and we want a border radius of 1 rem. Let's see what that looks like, and that looks okay. And maybe make the width just a bit bigger, like 5 rem, no, 4.5, and there we go. That's kind of okay. Also this looks a bit off. So like it's like the row is just the on and the off is hanging at the tip, so let's just give them a bit of a padding. So let's type dot row, target it, padding, top down can be 0, and right left let's just give like a really small padding, and that still looks a bit off, so let me make it 2.5, and that looks perfect. There we go. So we can do this, and next thing we want to do is basically create the circle. And what we're going for here is if we create a circle and place it on the on is going to be hidden, and the only thing that's going to be visible is the off. So it's going to give you the illusion of a button sort of thing. When you click on it, the circle will go to the right, hiding the off and only displaying the on. So again, it's going to give you the illusion of a working, functioning button. So now we should create that circle now. So let's just create a div called circle inside the button, and get back up here, dot circle, set the position to absolute, and top 0. I do not know what that is, not text outline. What we want is top to 0, and then left to 0, and we need to set the height and the width to the same thing. And since this is of 2 rem, we should set this to 2 rem as well, and the width should also be 2 rem so that we can get a circle. Next thing, we want to set the border radius to 50%, which will give it the curve that we're looking for. And finally, we want the background color to be this, so background color, and let's set that to this. That should have worked, and there we go, it did work. So that's basically all we need. What we need to do now is basically add the animation for the circle to go to the right. Also, I feel like the font is a bit too big, so I'm just gonna make it 1 rem, standard 1 rem. All right, so let's just add the animations in here. So comment animations. So let's add the keyframes, and then let's call this move circle right. Yeah, okay. And then we need it to go from left 0, and background color this light color. No, well, it's the darker blue, isn't it? We need the background color to, let me just copy it from here. much less hassle. All right, so let's type that in here, and then from there we want it to go to left 100% and background color, no, background color. So note that this has to be the same property, so you cannot have background in here and background color in here. So let me just get the yellow background color. It is meant to be this. All right, so there we go. So now this is actually gonna look a bit off, and let me close Figma. So the reason for that, okay, I'll just show it to you in action. It's the circle is going to go a bit too far off. So let's add the animation in here and move circle right is the name, and can keep the duration to 1 second, timing function delay, and let's set the iteration to infinite just so we can see what the so that we can see the animation working properly. And let's get rid of direction and fill mode. Let me save that, and it's working, but it's going a bit too far off to the left. The reason for this is because the circle is starting from a left of 0, and the beginning of the circle is going to the left 100%, but we want the end of the circle to go to the left 100%. So we want it to be contained within this blue box. So let's get down here, and to fix that we set the transform, and then we can say translate x to a -100%. That should fix it. There we go, that fixes it. We also need a reverse animation, so let's just copy that. The reverse animation is for when you want it to go back to its original state after you click on it twice. So let's call this move circle left. And the next thing we want is to actually change the background color of the button. So let's add another animation for that. So add keyframes, and then let's call it background yellow. You can go from background color light blue and to a background color of the light yellow, but I think we need Figma for that color again because we do not have that color in here. Let's just wait for that to load up. All right, so in here, this is the color we're looking for now, black, but this. All right, let's copy that and put that down here. Now hopefully the use of Figma is over. Let's just close that. And now if I just add the animation again to the button this time, so let me go to the button and background yellow. This should work. There we go, it works perfectly. So this is all the HTML and CSS we need to make this functioning. So the JavaScript code is like the final stretch for this project, and in the JavaScript code, the first thing we need to do is to make the button function like a button, and that is when you click on it, it goes to the right. And the second thing we need to do is to apply the dark mode styles to the currently open page. Before we start with that, let's just we missed out one animation in here, so that should be in here. So let me just paste that in here. So the reverse animation for basically the button, let me just paste this up here, and that should work. Okay, and one more thing we need to do in here would be to actually, let me just show you. So if I refresh this and open this up, it is going to look really thin and like small. So to like fix that issue, we can get in here, target the body, and then set its minimum width to 300 pixels. And then the next thing we want to do is text align center, and that should fix the issue. So like if I reload the extension in here now, did I reload it? Let's reload it. And there we go, it looks fine. So now the next thing we want to do is basically go into the JavaScript code. So now in here, we want to target the button as well as the circle. So let me get those two things in here. So the document dot query selector, and let's get the button. And the next thing we want to do is basically get the circle. So const circle equals document dot query selector and dot circle. The next thing we would need is this button called, a variable called button on. So, and we need to set it to false, and you'll see why in just a second. So button on and set it to false. And now what we need to do is basically we need to listen for a click onto the button. So when the button is clicked, execute a piece of code. So to do that, we just say button.add event listener, and the event we're listening to is for the click. And then when the click happens, we want to execute this arrow function. So inside this arrow function, what we want to do is basically check the status of button on. So if button on is false, execute the if statement, and else, if it is true, execute the false statement, the else statement basically. So let's set the button on to true here, which is the first thing we need to do, since our code basically relies on the state of this button, this variable and then now we want to set it to false in here. And now what we want to do is basically apply this animations to the circle. But before we do that, let's get back in here and let's set the cursor to pointer, so that what this does is it basically makes the cursor pointer, and we want to set the pointer events to none in here. So pointer events none, and as well as in here pointer events to none. And let's comment out these two things, the animations, because we don't need them anymore. And let's just get this from here, and we're going to need it in our JavaScript. So circle.style.animation, and what we need to do is set it to this. So, but what we saw when we had it set to infinite is that the circle perpetually and infinitely goes to the right, but we just want it to go to the right and stay there until and unless you listen to the click that makes it go back. So we should set this to forwards to make it go to the right and stay there. Next thing we want to do is basically apply a styling to the button. So .style.animation, and set it to what we copied, except in here it should be background yellow. And we want to set this to forwards as well. And the next thing we want is to basically just copy this and paste this down here. So circle left and background blue. This should essentially work, but we do need to attach the script tag in here and link up the JavaScript file. So source, and let's set that to popup.js. Now if I click on this, there we go, it goes to the right, but we do have a small issue. The background isn't changing. So it is button.style .animation background yellow. So I'm having an extra A, so let's get rid of that extra A, and now it should hopefully work. So there we go, it works perfectly, and when I click on it again, it goes back and it turns to blue. So now what we need to do is in here we want to apply the code to basically style the JavaScript file, not the JavaScript file, but like the page that is currently open. So to do that, now if we just do document and then target the HTML or the body and then set that to the dark mode styling, then what it's going to do is basically get the pop-up and change the background color of the pop-up. We don't want that. We want to change the background color of the page that is currently open. So to do that, we need access to the currently open tab. So for that, we need to basically that's the main reason why we set the permissions in here, because we need access to the currently open page. So now we're going to be using it. So how we use it is we just type in Chrome and then .tabs, and then we want to execute a script on the currently open script. So Chrome.tabs basically gets the currently open tab, and then we want to execute a script on that page. So execute script, and what we want to do is file and app.on.js. So app.on.js is a JavaScript file that we will be creating soon to have the styling that we need, like basically the kinds of styles you need to apply to the HTML to make it go into dark mode. But the thing I want to point out is it doesn't just have to be file, it could also be code, and then you could say alert hi, and then enclose that in double quotes, and this would run and work perfectly fine. But the thing is, all the styles we need for the dark mode is going to be way more than just one line, and if you enclose all of that inside double quotes, it's going to look really messy. So instead of all of that, we just get rid of this and we add all of that code into, just to like ensure cleaner looking code, we can add that into a new file. And the next thing we want to do is basically paste that down here and instead call app.off.js. Now we should actually create the app.on.js and the app.off.js. And now just for testing purposes, let's have an alert high in here. This is actually, when we turn on the extension now, we're actually gonna have a small error. I'll show you in just a second. So if I get in here and refresh, we're gonna get an error. So when you click on it, it says, cannot read property add event listener of null. So what it's basically saying is button doesn't exist. So when it doesn't exist, it doesn't know what it's supposed to be listening to the click off. The reason it doesn't exist is what JavaScript is doing is it's basically looking for the button function in here inside this page instead of the pop-up. So to make it look into the pop-up instead of the actual page, what we should do is only execute this piece of code when the pop-up exists. So inside the popup.html, we can quickly go into the body and give it a class of popup. And then inside here, we can say if document dot query selector and dot popup. So what this would do is it only runs this piece of code if the popup exists. Otherwise, it won't do anything. So let's add the opening and now close it up down here. And now if we clear all errors and go back and reload, there we go, it works perfectly fine. Now let's just get back in here, reload YouTube, and I'm also going to set it back to light theme. And now if I go in here and click it on, it says alert high. So there we go, it's perfect, it's working perfectly fine. So let me get this off and this off as well. Now we don't just want to say alert high. What we want to do is basically do all of the target the HTML and give the styles we need for it to go to dark mode. So what we want to do is target the entire HTML and convert every single color in there to its opposite. So like we want to invert it by 100% and we want to rotate the hue back by a 180 degrees. So let me just show you how to do it. So document dot query selector, let's get the HTML, and then what we want to do is style, and the property that allows us to invert the color is called filter. So we set the invert to 1, which is the same as invert 100%. Then we want to do hue rotate by a 180 degrees, and this should sort of work partially. So let me just reload the extension, no errors, and then reload the page. And now let's turn on, and there we go, it goes into dark mode. But the issue here is the pictures and the images, they look so bad. So the reason for this is that when we do this, not only are we affecting the HTML, we're also affecting all the images and the videos and basically all the media. And we don't want those to change because when they do change, they end up looking like this. So we just need to target those and set them back to normal. So let's get those things. So let's say media, let media equals document dot query selector. We need to select all of them. So query selector all. We need image, we need picture, and we need video. Now what we need to do is basically loop over each single one of these. So media dot for each, and then let's just do an arrow function, call it media item, do this, and inside here what we want to do is set the media item and give it the same style as we have on top in here. And then so this would basically essentially, this would invert everything, and this line would invert the pictures, images, and videos back to its normal mode. So let's just get back in there and see if that works. So let me refresh the extension and reload the page, and hopefully it should work. And there we go, it works perfectly fine. Now the images and the videos don't get affected anymore. So the next step is to basically wrap it up in a self-invoking function. So let me just say function, and let's do this, and let's cut this and paste this down here, and then let's finally call the function, and now it's going to be self-invoked function. Get rid of these lines, and next thing we need to do is basically apply the same things to the app.off.js, but in here we want to set the invert back to 0, hue rotate to 0, and in here as well, because we want it to go back to its original state. So let me save this, and this should hopefully work. Let me reload the extension, reload YouTube. Oh my god. All right. When you turn it on, it turns into this, and when you turn it off, there we go. It's perfect. It works perfectly fine. And like I said before, it's not just limited to that. So if I wanted to look for pizza, and then if I turn it on, there we go. Even the map looks fine. So let me just close this up, and that's basically all you need to make the Chrome extension. One thing is, the only reason I made this like this, called the Chrome tabs twice, is because I wanted to show you that you can do this twice and call multiple files. But you can make this a bit more efficient by using an if statement in here and then call a different function based on which loop it is in. Another thing you could do is basically use local storage to store the state of the button on to implement this in an if statement, if else statement. And yeah, that's one way you could make this code a bit better. But that's basically how you make a Chrome extension. Turn it on and it turns into dark mode, turn it off and it goes back to its normal. So yeah, that's how you make a Chrome extension. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope you learned how to make a Chrome extension from it, and I hope you have